according to our constitution. All he can ask for is that that officer be changed. If he has done anything contrary to the ethics of his profession, he has to go through a process, disciplinary process, by the Civil Service Commission, who employed him. And it is the consequence of those processes that determines whether he keeps his job. But the president can't wake up and say, I sack you. So not a few of the young people that I was discussing with then seemed surprised. That, so is this how it works? And indeed, I have discovered that a number of our people also express surprise when I explain the structure of government to them. So when I tell people that as a governor or as minister, I do not and I cannot sign a check, they seem surprised. I can't transfer money. All I can do at certain levels of approvals, when I'm satisfied that work has been done, the permanent secretary has looked at it, he recommends them to me, I can authorize that it goes to the next level for payment, but I can't pay. At certain levels, as minister, that's why you see us in Federal Executive Council every week. Those contracts are above our ministerial threshold. So they become a council decision rather than a ministerial decision. So then I explain to people that in our ministry, for example, we have several departments and directorates. We have a directorate for construction and rehabilitation, and our controller, Engineer Popola, controller in Lagos, is here. So he is from that department. But he reports to a zonal director in charge of Southwest, who reports to a director in headquarters for construction and rehabilitation. And we have the same thing for bridges, we have the same thing for design, for materials, geotechnics, and quality control. We also have a department for finance and accounts, as we have a department for legal matters and a department for procurement. Now, it might interest people to know that all the lawyers in the Ministry of Works are not the staff of the Ministry of Works. Those who have worked in government before might be familiar with this. They are the staff of the Ministry of Justice, reporting to the Attorney General. He is the one who has the authority to post them, to move them around, without reference to me. And the same thing, the Director of Finance and Accounts, and that's where money is paid. It's not our staff. It's a staff of the Accountant General in the Ministry of Finance. He reports to the Accountant General of the Federation, not to the minister. He's just in our ministry. So, and this is true of other ministries. So the core staff of our ministry are the valuers, the architects, the engineers, and those are our own staff. So if you go to the maintenance departments of other ministries, you will find our own staff too there, engineers, providing support for them in that area. Just like you will find medical officers in our ministry, they are not our staff, they're from the Ministry of Health. So this is just a bird's eye view of how this system works. And this is true of all ministries. And so it explains to us the processes of checks and balances and how we must work together to get things done. And this is largely true not only of the federal civil service, but also of the state civil service. And this is why the system of government is often referred to as a bureaucracy. And if you check the definition of that word, you will see sometimes references to processes that must be undertaken. So, but I am surprised that this surprises people, but this is my experience. When we have this conversation, people then express surprise, and their surprise surprises me. So this is part of the reason why I've chosen to have this discussion in a larger public forum, so that we become more acquainted with what we engage with every day and hopefully understand it. So very often I hear general statements that the president of Nigeria is very powerful. Have you heard that statement before? Yeah? That he has too much power. Some even say he's more powerful than the president of the United States. So therefore, another reason I have chosen the topic, what can the president do for me, is because I want us to discuss that subject here today. How powerful is that president? And in discussing his powers, let us then see what he can do for us. Because I want a better life, and I'm sure we all do. But I like to say that there is also a flip side to the powers of the president, how powerful he is. Some of our public discourse is also colored by some general statements that are not factual. Some statements to the effect that the vice president, the office, not the person, the office of the vice president, some have used the word, quote and unquote, is just a spare tire. Have you heard that word before? They are just general statements. They are not necessarily factual. And that he has no powers of his own except those assigned to him by the president. My response to this is that these statements betray a lack of knowledge about the Constitution, and I intend to discuss them here within the reasonable time limits that I have. So if one looks through the length and breadth of the Constitution, you will find that the office of the president is referred to 48 times. 48 times. That's a very, very powerful president. Is referred to 48 times. A closer look at the details for those who have read the Constitution will suggest possibly that there is an error in mixing up or conflating the powers of the president with the functions of the president. And if you mix up the powers with the functions, it can become misleading. And that difference is a significant difference. So what I've tried to do, I've defined power, legal right, and you can go on and check that. I've defined function as something that you are bound to do. So in the 48 mentions of the office of the president, I've broken down what each mention deals with. 23 instances refer to the powers that the president can exercise. 23 instances. This very, very powerful president. Just 23 places where he has powers that he can exercise. 9 of those powers refer to the powers that are exercisable by the National Assembly, by the president, exercisable by the president, subject to the National Assembly. So if he exercises that power, the National Assembly must concur. 4 instances refer to powers exercisable by the president, subject to other institutions also set up by the Constitution. 9 instances refer to the president's functions and duties. And I've said, let us identify and separate functions from powers. 3 instances refer to restrictions. Please remember those words, restrictions on the powers of the president. So that very, very powerful president actually has restrictions on his powers. Can't be so powerful after all. Mr. Chairman, do you have restrictions on your powers?
He does no wrong. He does no wrong.
He's more powerful than the president if he does no wrong. Great is all. So I have provided a table of all the references in the Constitution, and you may just want to follow up because time is not our friend. So these are the powers of the president, the executive powers of the federation. That's just what it says. Executive powers to execute and maintain the Constitution. Powers to make treaties. Powers to deprive registered or naturalized citizens. Registered or naturalized citizens. Not natural, not you and I. Those he registered or he approved national, he can take their citizenship back, but can't take mine, he can't take yours. Because it's given by birth. But interestingly, we may not be aware that while some people want to leave this great country, some people are coming in, applying to the citizens. On a yearly basis, this happens. The president has many other powers to assent to or withhold assent to a bill passed by the National Assembly, to issue a proclamation for the first session of the National Assembly, power to order withdrawal of monies from the Consolidated Revenue Fund for the purpose of meeting expenditure necessary to carry on the services of government and so on, establishment of the offices of ministers by virtue of which he has appointed me, assignment of responsibilities to the Vice President, and I will come back to that, power to appoint or remove chairman and members of federal executive bodies, and that's how he appointed Ashafa to MDA, FHA, and so on and so forth. And of course, I won't leave this as quickly as I want to proceed without mentioning power to give lawful direction to the Inspector General of Police with respect to the maintenance and securing of public safety and public order, not power to remove him. Doesn't have those powers. And power to direct the armed forces to suppress insurrection and acting in aid of civil authorities. And of course, as Commander-in-Chief, power to determine the operational use of armed forces, appoint chiefs of staff of defense, army, navy, and air force, appoint heads of other branches, and so on. Now, I'm just going to urge us to get a copy of this Constitution. You can find them online if you use apps on your phone. And just don't read, we're not reading for exam, but read to acquaint yourself. You can read 1 page, 2 pages a day. It's written in very simple English. And perhaps it will help us to understand why things are where they are and what can be done. I told us that there are powers that are subject to the National Assembly. So power to declare a state of war between the Federation and any other country, subject to the sanction of the National Assembly. So you can't go to war without the National Assembly approving it. They would have violated the Constitution. Deployment of armed forces on combat duty outside Nigeria, subject to the approval of the Senate. Appointment and removal of the Auditor General of the Federation, subject to the National Assembly. Appointment of ministers, even us. You remember we had to go to the Senate. If they reject any one of us, there's nothing the president can do about it. We can't act as ministers. That's a so powerful president. He can't even appoint us without the Senate. So it's just to help us to contextualize some of the overgeneralized statements that we have made, because they are not borne out by the reality. Even the power to appoint special advisors to assist him, the National Assembly is the one that determines the number it can have. So it can apply for 10 and they approve 5. Or they can approve 15 as they choose. So these powers are not powers running all over the place. Now, power to appoint judges, this is interesting. All federal judges, the power to appoint justices of the Supreme Court, and so on and so forth, subject to confirmation by the Senate. Now, I have talked about powers subject to other institutions provided in the Constitution. Let's just look at a few of them so that we move perhaps a little more quickly. Deployment of members of the armed forces on a limited combat duty outside Nigeria in consultation with the National Defense Council. So it can't act alone. Power to grant pardon to any person convicted of any offense created by an act of the National Assembly, the prerogative of mercy. The power is exercised by the President after consultation with the Council of State. Power to accept the report of the population census conducted by the National Population Commission. This power is subject to the advice of the Council of State. Now let me quickly speak about this Council of State. Who are the people there? Former presidents, Senate President, Speaker, CJN, and all the governors. Those are the people you must sit with. Appointment of the Inspector General. I refer to the point that you can give him lawful directives for crime control. And I said you can't sack him, but you can appoint him. But you can't do that appointment alone. He must do so on the advice of the Police Council. Who are the members of the Police Council? Some of the people I've just referred to, and governors. Now, there are further restrictions on the president. I'll just go through this. He is prohibited from holding any other executive office or paid employment. Very powerful president. But there's a restriction on him. Prohibition from maintaining or operating a bank account in a country outside Nigeria. Restriction. Prohibition from being employed by foreign company or foreign enterprise after leaving office, even after he has left office. This is all in our Constitution. So let me move quickly to the Vice President. The street talk, if you permit me, is that he has no powers, spare tire. On the contrary, that's not the case. Those who assert that position, in my view, tell a big lie. A lie born out of ignorance or a lie born out of mischief. The framers of the 1999 Constitution and our legislators seem to have deliberately attempted to entrust matters relating to security with the President. If you see all of the councils that he heads, the Defense Council, the Police Council, the Council of State, and all of that, they are matters relating to security. And they also seem to have entrusted the Vice President with matters relating to the economy. So the Vice President chairs the National Economic Council, a council that is comprised of some ministers, the Governor of Central Bank, I believe, and all the 36 governors and the Minister of the FCT. and they have powers to also invite people to join them. I have been invited before in matters relating to works and housing. But very quickly, while they did not say that the president cannot deal with economic matters, it is my view that given the clear constitutional provisions that the vice president is the chairman of the National Economic Council, the president cannot chair any meeting of the National Economic Council. He can't do so except he violates the Constitution. Because the Constitution is clear who the chairman is. It is the vice president. So I say, so much for the all-powerful president, who we have now seen the full definition of his powers. As for the vice president, his other constitutional duties and functions include to exercise powers as delegated to him by the president, and I've talked about that. He is also to perform functions of the president as acting president in the temporary absence of the president, and so on. But he's also, maybe we didn't know this, is the deputy chairman of the Council of State. He's the chairman of the National Economic Council, as I've pointed out. He's the deputy chairman of the National Defense Council. He's the deputy chairman of the National Security Council. He's the chairman of the Governing Council of the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA. He's the chairman. He's the chairman of the Governing Board of Border Communities Development Agency. He's the chairman of the National Boundary Commission. And he has powers to represent the President of the Federal Republic as the chairman of the Governing Council of the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority. He's also the chairman of the National Planning Commission. Is that still a spare tire? More importantly, and there are others, he's the chairman of the National Council on Privatization. Is that a spare tire? So, which brings me to the heart of the matter. And for me, the heart of the matter is why Nigerians place their hopes and expectations for a better life on their president rather than on their governors and their local government chairmen. Or put differently, as I've asked here, why do we sin? Because all the presidents that we have had, all, without exception, I don't recall anyone in my own cognitive life that we have loved while in office. We seem to love them after they have left. Or in some other case, after they died, and we refuse to vote them in, like the best president we never had. Why is that so? It's a question I have asked myself. And after deep reflection, it seems to me that the answer lies in the level of our interaction with our Constitution, or lack thereof. In other words, we are not fully or sufficiently familiar with our Constitution and the roles that each of these offices are expected to play. It seems to me that we are expecting the right thing from the wrong place. And I will give a few examples. So that's why I framed the question this way: what can the president do for me? And am I asking why should I ask the chairman to do for me what is the responsibility of the secretary of the club? Because it won't get done. And why should I be asking the secretary to do for me what is the responsibility of the vice chairman? And I would attempt to highlight this with some examples. I conducted a survey in the first quarter of this year, just trying to get a sense, sample nationwide, what people were expecting, where their pains were, what they expected. And the common thread was security.